because for a lot of folks this is new ground that's being broke for most people, because our only understanding of what you would call psychedelics, which means mind manifesting, in other words, it manifests the mind. We just know the propaganda that was put out by the United States government on psychedelics in the 1960s, you know, with people like Timothy Leary and Richard Albert and other people who were part of things like the psilocybin experiments, early experiments in prison and things like that from Harvard. So I'm going to talk a little bit about martial arts, a little bit about my background, a little bit about psychedelics in general and mushrooms in particular. Mushrooms in particular because they're the oldest of the hallucinogens that we have on planet Earth. Different things like salvia and you have Hawaiian baby rosewood, you have daturas, you have ayahuasca, you have homa, you have soma. And all of these different plants are hooked to particular cultures and particular places. But we find that mushrooms are the oldest because the mushrooms are the only form of hallucinogen that was encountered by early man and woman that gave a very special experience from the beginning of its ingestion. So real quickly here, we're going to move real quickly. As I said, I'm a martial artist. I teach ancient and contemporary African fighting sciences, and that goes into a plethora of different areas. It goes into empty hand fighting, weapons fighting, you know, stick and shield, spear and shield, poison, ritualistic binding, spells, curses, sorcery, all of those different types of things. And the art that I teach and practice, one of the arts, the main art is called Psyche, which means to contend. We also teach and practice Zulu stick fighting, Ikunilesa, Iluku, Gidibu, which is Nigerian form of wrestling, sport wrestling, Eke, which is the traditional fighting system, which deals with things like Ofo. Ofo is, I guess the best way you can connect it to something is a mantra. In other words of power that creates a change of environment. Whereas you speak a certain thing, it becomes what you have uttered. So to get into this real quickly, we're gonna go through this quickly because it's a little bit of a learning curve, it's a little bit of a history curve. It's gonna go into, well, let's just start off-world stuff. We know that the spores of mushrooms are one of the hardest things in nature. In other words, they approach the hardness of metal, and they're very well suited for the vacuum of space. In other words, they can percolate out into the atmosphere, out into space, and they can stay dormant in space for millions and millions and millions of years, because what activates them is water and, of course, air, an environment with water and air. And since NASA, with the Hubble Space Telescope and other big telescopes that they're getting ready to put up, have found exoplanets that have water. In other words, what they announced in NASA last week was that it's not whether there are extraterrestrials, it is only when we will encounter them. If we have not encountered them already, because everything that is alive or is conscious is not, doesn't have to have 2 arms and 2 legs, breathe air, and be an animal or a plant or whatever. It could be something exotic, and they could be walking right through here or living in the carpet and we not know it. Because we just haven't come to that realization as of yet. Terence McKenna, who was one of the luminaries in the psychedelic movement, the reemergence of the psychedelic movement, spoke about how mushroom spores have their own intelligence. In other words, they're conscious. Mushrooms are an older form of life form. In other words, we're more closely associated with fungi or mushrooms than we are with any other kingdoms, whether it be the insect kingdom, whether it be the plant kingdom. We're more closely associated because we have fungal genes, you know, from when we broke off from fungi. 465 million years ago, there was an asteroidal impact in the Yucatan, and at the speed and the size that this thing was going, it was already 5 miles into the Earth in the first second and a half. It threw up trillions of tons of dust and debris. Killed everything on Earth bigger than a chicken immediately, and everything almost except rats and roaches died right after that. What happened was, this debris that went up into the atmosphere and then eventually settled, it blocked out the sun, destroyed any type of plant life. And fungi ruled, in other words, because fungi don't actually need light. Although people think of toadstools and mushrooms as being poisonous and living in the dark. No, mushrooms actually increase in vitamin D when they're in the light. But they don't need light to be able to grow. There are many undiscovered mushrooms on the earth that are just coming into the, you know, research of people. Those mycologists who study fungi, it's just like Chernobyl. In Chernobyl, they had an accident with the nuclear reactor there. The reactor did the same thing that the one in Fukushima is still doing, which is the one in is still doing in other words. So that's, Fukushima is probably the biggest disaster in human times because it's still spewing radiation out into the ocean and things like that, little sidebar. But they found that black melanated mushrooms are growing inside of the reactors, eating up the radiation and deactivating the radiation in Chernobyl. And these mushrooms grew spontaneously because of the particular circumstances that developed. So they came from wherever they came from because there wasn't any radiation hotter than that around, and they just came and started eating up the radiation. So what we say is, and what we have done in research is that mushrooms came from outer space, hard enough to survive the entry into the earth, and when the circumstances became correct as far as being able to get to moisture, the air concentration was correct, they proliferated. And then what happened was, when a creature that was able to ingest and then utilize the information, the galactic information that the mushrooms had acquired in their particular sojourn through the solar system, because these mushrooms have extragalactic information. And since we as Homo sapiens sapiens, in other words, the thinking apes, encountered these mushrooms, it delivered the information and gave us a new way of thinking, a new way of looking outside of the box that went from being able to basically reach from one side of the tree and throw an apple to somebody else into what we have now with jet planes and things like that. And that's not the first time, because it's 5x, because the earth has been destroyed 5 times. Human beings have come out of the ashes of that and re-emerged with technology, because before the planes that we had, the nuclear weapons that we had, things like that, we had those things already before. And it's talked about in the ancient records in Kemet, in Mesopotamia, it's talked about in the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and things like that. And also in places like Peru and things like that, with the Olmecs, the Toltecs, the Mayan, and the Aztecs. Talk about these things. They had calendars, they had high technology. In India, they talk about the Vimanas, which are the craft that, interdimensional craft that pop in and pop out and move at tremendous speeds. The place that we're going to be talking about is the Sahara. Basically a place called the Tassili Plateau. The Sahara was green up until about 2,000 years ago. The Roman historian Pliny the Elder talked about how the Sahara was the breadbasket of Rome. The Sahara of Egypt. That's how you get into the whole conflict with Julius Caesar, Marcus Antony, and Cleopatra, or Cleopatra the Eighth, because the grain shipments had stopped going to Rome, and the Roman army moved on grain. So we know that the Sahara was green up to about 2,000 years ago. The Sahara is what built the Kemetic civilization, or the Egyptian civilization, by the Sahara drying up. In other words, when people started to move around, they move with water, or they need availability of water. So the Sahara having great streams, rivers, tributaries, lakes, things like that, people didn't have to be stuck at one particular water source. But about 12,000 years ago, it started getting so dry that the Sahara, even though it had started 1 million years ago, became drier and drier and drier and drier and drier, and people started moving towards the diminishing water in the areas in which they were. So it pushed people from the Sahara and surrounding areas to the Nile. It pushed people from the surrounding areas to the Tigris and Euphrates. It pushed people from the surrounding areas to the Jordan and things like this. So when the beginning happened, Africa and most places on earth were rainforests. Africa was a rainforest from the top to the bottom, from the Cape to Cairo. And as it became drier and drier, people moved out of the trees into the new areas, which were grasslands. Those grasslands had on it animals that were large predators and also large cow-like, cattle-like animals, bison, ibex, proto-cattle, and things like that. And that's what this is depicting on the Tassili Plateau walls at Egypt, which are labyrinth caves where early men and women depicted what they saw in their environment and also in their hyperdimensional environment when they ingested the mushrooms on the Sahara grasslands, which eventually became desert. So what happens here is this. These early people ingested the mushrooms because they're crophilic. Crophilic means dung-loving. In other words, they like the dung of cows, but not just cows. It can be camels, elephants, hippopotamus. And once we get into the Kemetic part of it, or a portion of it, and we start talking about Kepra, the dung beetle, why is the dung beetle so significant? Why is the dung beetle an icon in Kemetic iconography and literature? Because it pushes the dung that has the mushrooms in it, because it's not about finding the secret, or it's not about finding out what we have to do. It's about facing what we have to do and understand that the next level of the development of human beings is going to come in two different ways. And two different types of singularity. Singularity is an event that happens singularly, and it's like the physics inside of a black hole. What happens is you're having a technological singularity and an organic singularity. Technological singularity is cyborgs, artificial intelligence, human augmentation. You know, they're doing the Soldier of the Future program at MIT and Stanford and Cambridge and Oxford and Eton and the University of Pennsylvania. And they're dealing with not only what you call therian drops, in other words, merging of genes between humans and animals. In other words, if you want to make a super soldier, what do? You want the soldier to be fierce. And you can't really do that in 13 weeks. They found that out in World War I and World War II. They found it out all the way back to the Roman period, Greek period, and all the way back. That you can't make a soldier, a warrior in 13 weeks. But if you merge their genes with wolf genes and leopard genes, it makes the soldier more fit. And you have technologies that are being developed at in Philadelphia, at the university there. It's about myostatin inhibitors. Myostatin is what makes your, what stops your muscles from growing. And you have also what's called the Golgi tendon. See, every person has superhuman strength. We've all heard the thing about the lady who grabs the car, the baby's under, she lifts the car. Because you've disrupted the Golgi tendon. In other words, everybody could pick a car. This young man here could go outside and pick a car, but it wasn't for the Golgi tendon. But the thing is that you hurt yourself doing that, so you have a governing mechanism inside of you that stops you from tearing your muscles up, because the tendon strength is not there. It can happen on occasion, but it's not something you just go out and do. The myostatin stops your muscles from growing. Well, you can't explain it, but I'll try to explain it a little later when we get to that portion. This is the mushroom. It's a blue mushroom. It bruises blue. This is called psilocybin marii or psilocybin tamari. It's one of the cubensis mushrooms, Stropharia cubensis. They call it cubensis because the first genus was identified in Cuba. So they call it cubensis all of them. You have mushrooms that grow in Cambodia at Angkor Wat. You have mushrooms that grow in Mexico. You have mushrooms that grow in the Sahara and Kemet area, even though you can't get them there no more because it's too dry, desert. But there's other spots that you can get them. So Cambodia, Thailand, Australia, all have their mushrooms, and all those civilizations where you see pyramids and big temples and things like that, the mushrooms built them by merging with the human beings, delivering information on how to do these things. This mushroom is the kinetic mushroom. This is where Ra and Nebhed, Haru, and the others live inside of this mushroom. This mushroom gives you access to those worlds. Just like the food of the gods in Mexico will give you Aztec, Toltec warriors and civilizations through the mushrooms that were there. See, what you have in Kemet is how one family chose to clothe themselves in reality, the family of Ra. When the pre-Kemetic priesthood ingested these mushrooms and went into the hyperdimensional realms, what they saw, falcon-headed humanoids, abyss-headed humanoids, what they did and what they saw when they came back to regular consciousness, back to Earth, because Kemet is the mirror of heaven. What they saw in the heavens under the influence of these mushrooms is what they built when they came back. They didn't have the light to deal with that they were looking at, because in the hyperdimensional realm, those things are built with light and darkness. So when you see the pleated skirts, when you see the pleated sheer flax here in Kemet on Earth, the sheer light pleated clothing is what they saw. When they saw the temples built of light, they couldn't build on light out of light when they got here, back down here. But when they came back down, what they did was they built with what they had, which was stone. So there's so much technology that goes on. There's so much information. The universe, people say the universe is made of love. People say the universe is made of spirit. People say the universe is this, that, and everything. The universe is information. The universe is built in information. The information changes just in me doing this. From here to here. I've said something totally different. The women that wear the head ties, it's information. The gele, from the gelede. You don't know that if you tie the knot and put it to the side, that means you're looking for a husband. You put it on the other side, you're married. If you have a double lapa, you know you're married, because why? Because you take the lapa, and that's what you put the baby on the back with. The oldest culture, you put the baby on the back. Why do you put the baby on the back? Because as you walk, as the women walk and her hips move, the baby is on the back, and the baby is learning how to walk because the baby is doing this. Not bouncing the baby with a thing in the front, or in a swaddle, or something like that, but the baby is learning how to be human on the back from the beginning, because the baby is on the mother's back is not just bouncing like, you know, they buy those modern things to put the baby in the front and the baby bounce like this. No, when the baby is on the back, the baby is learning how to walk, because the baby is on the mother's hip and the baby is doing this. So it's information. Depleted skirt. Why did the Romans and the Greeks wore little short skirts, but why did you have depleted skirt? Because depleted skirt is technology. Clothing is technology. It came from the god. It came from this mushroom. Because depleted skirt is a time machine. The folding of space. Anybody here read Dune? Frank Herbert's Dune? Well, Frank Herbert wrote Dune on psilocybin mushrooms. Oh, right. That's where he talked about moving without moving, folding space. The Bene Gesserit utilizing parthenogenesis to create the universe's super being, the Kwisatz Haderach. In other words, women, parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis is where a woman has a baby without the utilization of a man. Now, probably 30% are parthenogenic anyway, but we don't look at it nowadays because usually the woman is with the man, and you just assume that if you're married and your husband and you got a baby, then it's your husband's. But it may not be. It may be that that baby was produced parthenogenically, because women still have the ability to produce parthenogenically. They're going to have to, because man is being destroyed. Manhood is being destroyed. There won't be men around. Y'all will have to get together one day when all the men are gone and say, let us make man in our image and our likeness. Let us bring back man. If y'all want to get to that point and do it, because man is disappearing. So this is called the bee shaman. First of all, let's go first what a shaman is. There's only one culture in the world that is shamanistic, and that is the Siberian shaman. That's where the word shaman comes from. It's used colloquially all around the world for anybody now, in modern times, who's not a priest, a rabbi, or an imam. They used to call him the witch doctor, the hoodoo man, the root person, you know, stuff like that. But they throw the term on everybody. Instead of asking the culture, what is the name of what you're doing, sir, they just, you know, the anthropologists go out and say, you know, okay, he's a shaman. So if you throw it hard enough, I guess it'll stick. This is called the bee shaman. Whereas you have mushrooms sprouting out of the body, and the head is of a bee. The head is of a bee because in ancient times, preserving delicate foods was difficult, especially mushrooms, because mushrooms, if any moisture, once they get dried, if any moisture come around, they get soggy, and that's pretty much it. Except mushrooms like reishi, which is very wood-like, or what they call ling shi in Chinese, they call it ling shi, and in Japanese they call it reishi. But these psilocybin mushrooms that are coming out in the head of a bee, the way they were preserved was through putting them in honey. And that's why you have the bee here. You also have the Green Hornet Society and the Black Hornet Society and the Society of the Bees in Kemet. Those are secret societies. The secret of Kemet, the sacred and the secret of Kemet is that those Kemetic priests did not meditate upon what they knew. They ingested a particular substance. It's no different. And I'm not going to beat up on yoga, but I'm going to talk about yoga because that's something you know. I can talk about the black watch beside it and you're not going to know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to talk about yoga. Yoga, what we know as yoga, that is 19th century European gymnastics. It's not old. It's not 150 years old. Paramahansa Yogananda and others in the first part of the 20th century brought those things here. You know, Paramahansa didn't do a lot. He just basically sat around and talked, you know, because he talked about that people in the West didn't know how to sleep. They didn't know how to breathe properly. And that's why they didn't have any longevity. And Paramahansa Yogananda, he must have not been doing it right either, because he died at 52. But the thing is that what we know as yoga is 19th century gymnastics. Now that doesn't make anything wrong with it. During the Mahabharata was a war between one family or cousins. You had the Pandavas and the Kauravas. The Pandavas were the sons of Pandu, and their cousins, whom they grew up with, they were always in conflict with. They learned martial arts together. They learned the arts together. They grew up in the same household, in the same kingdom, because Pandu's blind brother was the king when Pandu died. Now there's a whole story that goes into that, but I'm not going to get into it. So eventually, they had a war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas and the kingdoms of the earth. And they brought these two warring factions together. And in the midst of starting the war, when they were blowing their transdimensional conch shells, because a conch shell is a weapon. It's not a modern weapon where you're going to see, you know, a pistol or atomic bomb or throwing a grenade. Because in ancient times, you didn't just have fire weapons, because all today you have is fire weapons. If it's an atomic bomb, it makes fire. If it's a gun, you shoot the bullet, it hits the primer, an explosion of fire happens, compression pushes the bullet out, and that's what makes it go. If it's a grenade, it's fire. You have fire weapons, but in ancient times you had water weapons, you had wind weapons, you had earth weapons, you had cold and cold temperature weapons, and they were conveyed through the use of transdimensional bows. In other words, you can take an arrow out and shoot the arrow, and when you release the arrow and the arrow hits, it will freeze everything to 0 degrees Kelvin. You can take an arrow out and shoot the arrow, and when the arrow lands, tornadoes come up out of the ground. Things like this. So they were blowing their transdimensional conch shells, changing the environment, making the environment palatable to all the other weapons that will be coming. So in the midst of that, Arjuna, who was the third son of Pandu, the greatest warrior, who had taken as his chariot driver Krishna. Krishna, well, we can't go all into Krishna tonight, but Krishna provided his service to either side of the fighting factions. He said, you can take me, and I won't participate or fight in the battle. I will just be the chariot driver. Or you can take 10,000 of the best warriors on earth. The Pandavas said, we will take Krishna. The Kauravas said, we want the 10,000 warriors. Because Krishna ain't gonna fight. Because if Krishna fought, then it wouldn't be no battle. Because Krishna had what's called the Sundasara chakra. Now this is what a chakra is. It's not the whole, you know, the little chart with the circles with the blue, you know, one is blue and one is red at your throat, and they tell you if you're too gruff, your heart chakra ain't open and all that kind of stuff. No, the chakra is the weapon of Indra given to Krishna when he incarnated on earth. It's like a DVD disc. When Krishna raises his hand this way and puts his finger up, the chakra appears on his finger as a disc. And as he thinks of his enemy, the disc leaves his finger, cuts the enemy's head off, and before the head can hit the ground, it's already back on his finger. So if Krishna would have fought in the battle, all Krishna would have had to do was raise his finger like that. The chakra would have went out, killed every person on the other side of the field, and been back on his finger before the heads hit the ground. So since Krishna wasn't fighting, the Kauravas said, well, we'll take the 10,000 warriors. But Arjuna, who was the greatest warrior on earth, had Krishna as his chariot driver and the standard of Hanuman. Hanuman, who was the hero from the Ramayana, which was an earlier rendition of Rama and his fight against Ravana. So you have to buy these books, or you have to look at the movie, go to the Indian store and get the Mahabharata. It's 40 discs. It's 40 DVD discs. Because they do this thing all the way. You can get the short version, they got an international version. That's one disc. Excuse me, that you can get. But as they were blowing their transdimensional conch shells, and Krishna pulled out into the middle of the field, Arjuna drops his Govinda bow, which he got from the heavens. He drops his inexhaustible quiver. In other words, he has a quiver with arrows in it that never goes empty. He could shoot forever, and the arrows would not be diminished. He drops them and he drops to the ground. He says, I can't do this. Even though there's some dirty buzzards, we can't, I can't kill my cousins. Because on the other side, his grandfather was on the other side. His teacher who taught him martial arts from the little boy was on the other side. They were all on the other side. He said, I can't kill them. What am I going to do? Krishna said, what is this? You're a kshatriya, a warrior. Stand up, fight. This is what you're supposed to do. Everybody on the other side of the field is already dead. Y'all already dead. Because there's no such thing as death. What you are, no fire can burn, no wind can make you cold, no water can drown you, nothing can extinguish what you are, because what we see as death is just the giving over of the flesh, whereas the soul continues in countless bodies, in countless experiences, and can never be killed if you're real and you are alive. Arjuna said, I can't, yeah, you're saying this, but I can't fathom this. So what Krishna did was, went in his little pouch, brought out a little gourd with the mushroom juice in it, said, I'm going to show you. Drink this. Arjuna drinks it, and then Krishna shows him his transdimensional forms, his sovereign yoga, the real yoga. What I am in reality, not what the illusion that I showed as far as a persona, as far as a face, but what is the real you. So Krishna showed him his transdimensional form. That's why you see all the pictures with the 1,000 arms, and each arm got a different weapon in it. Because regardless of what folks want to say, in the transdimensional realms, it ain't no different than on Earth. They fight like cats and dogs. That's why I said I'm a martial artist, and this is part of the so-called sorcery. Sorcery don't have to be bad. It's according to how you are and who you are. If you're a bad sorcerer, you're a bad sorcerer. You want to be Darth Vader? You take the Torah. The Torah is a delirium. It's dark. And I'm not saying dark in the sense of the darkness is not good. Because even if you go and look at the last sequence of the Lord of the Rings, no, the one before that, the Desolation of Smaug. When Sauron steps out and throws Gandalf up against the wall, and he said, no light is powerful enough to stop darkness. Because there's only a little bit of light in the universe. There's a little bit of light. There's a whole bunch of darkness. You want to call it dark matter, dark energy. just plain old no light. So Arjuna drinks this, goes through his trip into the hyperdimensional realms, into the extra-dimensional realms, into the psychedelic realm, into the hallucinogenic realms, comes back and he understands that I can't kill nobody. So he gets on his chariot, they do the fight, and you know how fights end. They won. But that is what yoga is. Yoga is to soma. Soma is the hallucinogenic brew that was part of it. It's no different than the Kakyan at the Eleusinian Mysteries. At 18, between 18 and 21, everybody had to go and take the Kakyan, the Eleusinian Mystery. You had to go through the mysteries. Because this is the mystery. It ain't far away. It's not something that you can't get to. All it takes is courage. Because it takes courage. It doesn't take courage to get started. Because mushrooms like people. They like to be part of human beings' metabolism. So they're good with beginners. They'll show you the fairy bubbles and, you know, beautiful lights and universes being birthed and all that kind of stuff. But when you really work with it, when you get to the point where you really get into this thing and want to, you say, okay, I've seen all the beautiful flowers and the planets with orange water and, you know, skies with 20 suns in it, and, you know, you don't get sunburn and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, your ancestors, if that's where you want to go. Because you have the technology that's been here, that's right in front of you, that deals with that. This is another bee shaman. This is mushrooms growing on hippopotamus dung. So you have 3 levels of ingestion with mushrooms. You have in doses so low that that they don't register as a hallucinogenic effect. It gives you visual acuity. So in a hunting and gathering situation, that's an adaptive advantage. In other words, you can see game at a further distance. You can see predators at a further distance. If you're gathering, as in the women, you can see that blue flower, that the root is real good to eat at a greater distance, so it's an adaptive advantage. Also, you can see predators at a greater distance. You know, because human beings in long distance running can outrun anything pretty much on Earth, except for maybe wolves. Everything else they can pretty much outrun. You can outrun a lion, you can outrun a tiger, you can outrun a cheetah. But in the first 100 yards, you a burger. If you always see when a lion is chasing a zebra or something like that, if it don't catch it in about 80 yards, it's like, you know, it's like, okay, well, we're getting up. Because what it is, they go for the young and the old in the pack. You shake up the pack and you see who's too old and going slow. You let them learn a little bit, then you get after them and you chase them. You chase them down, you grab them in the flanks or bite them in the neck, and down they go. But if they go more than 80 yards, it's like, okay, we get somebody else. So human beings out, if you get out and get to running and get ahead of them and keep going, they're going to stop. Except for wolves, a pack of wolves will run your ass, run you down. A pack of wolves will run you down. So what happens is that moving from the Sahara, because we still gotta do this quickly. Moving from the Sahara. The drying of the Sahara is what pushed the people to the Nile, which was the only available water source in the area. That's how city-states form, how empires form, because of the bulk of the people in a small area accumulating and living together, and that's what builds a city-state. You know, all these things came about because of the climatic changes that were happening. So when we moved them from the Sahara to Kemet, and Kemet started to develop, what happens is that when there was water in the Sahara, you had an abundance of mushrooms. You had animals out there, they were defecating all over the place. Mushrooms were plentiful. So we had a shared experience. Everybody got a chance to eat the mushroom. So it wasn't no thing like if I come in and said, well, you know, I'm not a Yoruba, but last night when a wormhole opened in my bedroom and Shango walked through the wormhole and started talking to me, you know, it's like, yeah, okay. Well, I said, last night when I took 20 grams of mushrooms and in the middle of my trip, the predator started chasing the alien through the doggone house. You know, he got his, you know, little laser on, and the alien is running through the house, jumping off the wall and stuff like that. I said, when they came out the world, when I'm done that, they said, well, you know, see, that's why they don't need to give y'all no stuff like that, because you'll be thinking crazy stuff. But see, in the beginning, you had a shared experience. Everybody took it. So we all sitting around the campfire, and we didn't all knock down our mushrooms, and we sit down in the fire, and up out of the fire raises up a being, and he's got the head of a falcon and the body of a human being. And he's got things on that we didn't have on. He got on shoes. Because at the time we're talking about, it wasn't a human being on earth that had a pair of shoes. But they weren't writing on the wall showing shoes. So when this being comes up out of the fire that we all sitting around, we're all one family, it's about 70 of us. He comes up out of the fire and says, hey, y'all going the wrong way. There's getting ready to be a flood down there. Y'all need to go to the highlands. So when the flood comes, y'all don't get drowned. Because y'all all eat the mushrooms. So y'all start walking to the highlands. You got another group walking the other way. They say, hey, you better not go that way, it's getting ready to be a flood. Say, look, astronomy and astrology ain't going to be invented for another 30,000 years. What is y'all talking about? It's going to be a flood. How you know? Well, we was all sitting around the fire eating mushrooms. Well, okay, yeah, they was. Okay, we'll see y'all next season when we come back this way. But end up, they get drowned. Y'all didn't get drowned because y'all ate the mushroom, and the being that came up out the fire said, go to the highlands. So y'all all know this being, Haru. His name is Haru. So when Haru come back and say, hey, y'all want to get some good game, you need to go over here to the west, and there'll be herds of game there for y'all to get. So, oh, cool. Haru said we're going to some game down here, so we're going to have some, you know, nice steaks and burgers and, you know, stuff like that. So we go down to this nice game there. And that's good. That goes on for 20 or 30,000 years. But then the Sahara started drying. The mushrooms started becoming scarce. Whereas you could do it once a month before the big hunt. See what Haru got to say, or Aset has to say, or any one of them has to say. We can't do that no more because we ain't got enough. So we got to do it maybe once a year. Then we say it's so few mushrooms left, we'll just have the elders take it. Then it gets so scarce, we'll just have the oldest folks take it. The oldest man and the oldest woman, they take it and tell us what Haru said. But since we're in the generation that actually experienced Haru under the influence of the mushrooms, when the old people say, well, we got to go to the east to do this and do that, because Haru said so, they say, oh, well, if Haru said so, let's go. But when that generation starts dying out, and there's only mushrooms for the two eldest in the village, in the group, and you got a new generation that they never experienced Haru because they never ate the mushrooms because the mushrooms became scarce and there wasn't enough to give them. There's only enough to give the two oldest people. And they say, well, Haru said we need to go east. And the new folks is like, who is Haru? Well, Haru is the person that come up out the fire when we eat the mushrooms. And they're like, Okay. Even when they come up under, I ain't never seen nobody come up out no fire. But they go along with it. But they now move from a level of experience to a level of belief. You got to believe what the two oldest people said. You got to believe that there's a Haru because you never experienced Haru because somebody always told you that it's a Haru you ain't never experienced or had a Haru that you could talk to, look at, have a relationship with. Jesus. And then they wanted the rest of it. Because it's not an experience, it is a tale. So when it gets to this point, to whereas those two elder people have ingested the mushrooms, and they continue to ingest the mushrooms, and they continue to give information, priestcraft is created. Now that's okay if the first few generations are sincere, but eventually you get to a point to where I'm working in the field all day. You know, I'm there pulling up the weeds, keeping people out the, you know, coming by, taking the cabbage or tomato and stuff like that. You know, of course, we're just talking cabbage, tomatoes, and farm. You're working hard all day in the sun. Then the people who are at the temple, they got a little temple. They give information. They come by and say, hey, since we're the temple people, we can't work. You know, we just sprinkle water, you know. That's what they do. They sprinkle water. They pull the incense around, stuff like that. Then they go back to the temple. And you still out there working in the field all day. And they say, well, you know, when you harvest, you're going to have to bring, you know, a bunch of tomatoes and a bunch of cabbage and some greens and corn and stuff like that by the temple, so because God needs some food. And the people who had heard it, they said, well, you know, you got to bring us the choice bull, you know, slaughter them, give us the right, you know, foreleg of the bull. We only want the unblemished and stuff like that. Bring it on back. And so, since they didn't want to give the information, priestcraft has started. You take the stuff up there. People get this running. Say, shoot. I'm sitting there. I'm 12 years old. I've been working in the heat all day. I see my daddy take all the corn and cabbage that we didn't work for to the priest, and the priest ain't doing that. He just come back and once in a while and, oh, hey-oh, and sprinkle the water. You know, put the incense around, collect his, you know, food and go back in the temple. And they sit back in the temple the rest of the day in the cool and eat the food. And I'm 12 years old and said, shoot, I don't want this job. I'm out here working all day and they back in the back sitting in the cool of the day and they ain't coming back out till the sun go down and they eating all the food that we work for. That's the job I want. So when he goes for that job, he's not under this, it's not for the same reason that I want to serve my community and I want, you know, it's kind of like the police. You know, it ain't that, you know, you want to protect and serve, it's that you want to, you know, you was the little boy that they beat up in junior high school and crushed your ego, and now you with the biggest gang in the United States with unlimited resources, unlimited power, and you want to get back at every guy you see. It's like the Napoleonic complex with the little guy. Not that every little guy has it, but or short guy has it, but some little guys have it. The biggest guy they want to put their aggression and anger at because he looked just like the guy, you know, you be riding down the street. Car 54, where are you? We're on Hastings and 17th. We have a suspect, you know, 5'5", very light complected black man wearing a purple suit with orange shoes. And you ride past a guy who's 6'4", got on a hoodie and some blue jeans, and you say, well, that must be him, because he looked like the guy who beat you up when you was 12 years old, and he looked enough like him that you're gonna get your ego off on him. So the thing is this, then corruption went into the priesthood because they went into the wrong reasons. Then it became, we don't need no little house, we need a big house, we need a, because God got to live in this house, we need a house that's a mile. We know the drill after that, you know. You know, you got a couple of priests in the back. Yeah. Them three up there. It becomes corrupt, it becomes priestcraft. So by the time it gets to Kemet, it becomes ritualized and stylized, but the secret is still there. Metametra is not to be read, it is to be experienced. It is a DVD disc. You ingest your mushroom, like the mushroom caps here, because they say the caps are the female and the stems are the male, the lingam and the yoni. This is the ceremony of opening of the mouth. You see here, Anu is holding the mushroom symbol, which is the stem and the cap stylized, superimposed over the front of the mummy. It's not, the mummy is not part of the mummy. It's in front of the mummy and he's holding it. It is the kabit, the musket. And these are the mushroom caps because you open the mouth so that you can put it into the person, so the person can experience this. You eat the mushroom at specific doses because it's dose specific. You eat these caps, and these characters step off the wall and three-dimensionalize, become animated, and you experience this. At certain doses, you go into the wall. Other doses, they come off the wall and tell you what's going on. It's an experience. Not a tale, but an experience. It's the statues, they say the statues talk. It's because they eat mushrooms standing in front of the statues. Your shrine in your house is, yes, it's a representative of your internal soul. But the shrine is a place that you go to. You put all that stuff there, the shrine is a place that you go to. You meet the entities on your shrine. This is a mandala, Tibetan mandala. They do it with sand. The Navajo do sand paintings also. It's the same thing. They put an algorithm together, took this mandala, and said to the computer, three-dimensionalize this, and this is what it gave it. Because it's a place. It ain't something on the floor. That's where the Buddhists go. The old Buddhists, not the ones that now say that you don't take hallucinogens because you're going to meditate up on it or breathe up on it. No, that's where the divas live and teach in these places. That's the Persian rug. The red dye is the Syrian root. Syrian root is African root, it's the root. You utilize it, you mix it with a acacia to create haoma, which is the Persian version of soma. DMT is the most powerful hallucinogen that we have record of. Dimethyltryptamine. Your body makes it endogenously in the pineal gland through a cascading effect from tryptophan, from eating bananas and potatoes and stuff like that. It cascades through the body all the way to where your pineal gland, through polymerizing melanin, creates DMT, and you have a spiritual experience. It's done, women do it in childbirth. The baby gets their first flush of DMT when the 47th day inside of the womb, when the idea is fully formed and REM sleep starts, when sexual differentiation starts, when you can tell the little boy from the little girl, these are very special and sacred times. That's why animals fight to the death. The female will fight to the death that once she's conceived that she won't have sex with the male again, because at certain times you can change the neurochemistry of the human being to flip their sex. In other words, you can make the little boy's brain get stuck in the female persuasion. So yes, there are in vitro homosexuals. There are people who are born homosexual because of certain chemicals in their brain, and it's not their fault. The brain is what does it. Because there's a difference between the female brain and the male brain. And you can flip it the other way also. This is at that time is when they get their first flush of DMT. And you can get it in near-death experiences, and at the time of death, when there's no longer blood pressure and your heart pumping, when your heart stops pumping and the blood-brain barrier is no longer evident in there, DMT can flood the system, and that's where you do your traveling at. That's why they had 60 days. That's why they have 70 days of ritual along with helping you go into the next life. But now, you know, they'll throw some mountain fluid in you and all that kind of stuff, and you just jacked up. Either get cremated quick, or you jacked up. You'll be wandering around unless you've been taking mushrooms, you know, and get some at the last moment where you just keep right on going. Like Aldous Huxley took a magnanimous amount of LSD when he was dying. He just kept right on going. Stepped right off. But this is a place. It's not just a rug. That's why families kept carpets rolled up thousands of years. All of them went on the floor. Most of them were on the wall. Because that's where you sit. That's the magic carpet. Aladdin. 1001 Nights. The magic carpet. Because you put the carpet on the floor, you eat your acacia nilotica with the Syrian root, sit on the carpet, and each one of these configurations in here not only three-dimensionalized, but they're different places. Your ancestors may live here. Your great-grandmother and your grandmother there. Say your grandmother died, and you had a falling out with your grandmother, and you never could say to Granny, you the elder, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have been so smart. So Granny died. You've been having problems ever since. You take your mushrooms, or you take your acacia and Syrian root, and you sit on the carpet, and if the ancestors are there, you go to your grandmother, or your grandmother come up out of here, and y'all get a chance to talk it out and finish it. Woo! Or, the unborn are here. You want a particular child for a particular thing, and that particular child is waiting there for you to call. I know y'all heard about the culture, about the African group that had the song, that the sister sit down under the tree until she has a song, and she sings it to have the conception, and when the conception day, they sing the song to the baby, and when the baby comes, they sing their song. That's why all of the mastery and sorcery and understanding that we lost, because we don't do these things anymore. That's why you whisper in the baby's ear 7 times in the right ear when the baby is born, and give the baby's name so that the baby knows its name before everybody else does. And you don't do it the first day, because if you call them too early, they'll go back. Because the family on that side love them just as much as you love them coming here. So they sing the song. If the child get out of line or whatever, you sing the baby's song. If he's in Nigeria, if you're in Nigeria and the baby's in Boston and the baby's having some trouble or some problems, they in Nigeria are going to sing the baby's song because the baby got its own song. And when they pass on, you whisper the words 7 times in the right ear. If you read Water and Spirit by Malidoma Some, when it talked about when the old elder died and he wasn't in the village, and he had to be, because he's the high priest of the village, he had to die in the village. And they went to him and whispered in his ear 7 times. And he sat up in the bed like that, stepped off the bed and walked to the village. Went to the bed, sat on the bed, and went back like this. Because they're doing these things. This is a place. This is Syrian root, explains what it is, all that kind of stuff. I live in Detroit, right outside of Detroit, the biggest Middle Eastern population outside of Saudi Arabia, Dearborn, Michigan, and they use this for incense, so I can go buy pounds of it for $10. This is a Cenobite puzzle box from what? Anybody know? The Evil Dead. Not the Evil Dead, Pinhead now. Yeah. Hellraiser. Puzzles, labyrinths. Did you see the movie Labyrinth with the little guy, the singer, David Bowie? Labyrinths, puzzles, they ain't to play, they're places. Pinhead didn't live in this. I can go to take you to Toys R Us and give you 20 grams of mushroom, sit that puzzle box right on top of that thing right there, and Pinhead and the rest of them Cenobites come out of this thing. It's not a plaything. They know what it is. They showed it to you because they got to show it to you. And you got to accept it as fantasy. No different than the Avengers. You think the Avengers is just comic books? Jack Kirby, who was the mastermind behind Marvel Comics, not Stan Lee, not the guy who you see doing the cameos in the pictures and running around. Stan Lee was the nephew of the guy who owned the comic book company back in the 30s and 40s and couldn't make no money with it and gave it to him in the 1950s. Jack Kirby, who had ties to Allen Dulles and the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, which later became the CIA, got classified information from Operation Paperclip for the Nazi super soldier program because Captain America, they built Captain America. They got the Iron Man suit now. They're getting ready to come with the whole extended Marvel universe, which ain't nothing but mushrooms. And what they got out of mushrooms? The Infinity Stones. They're telling you right there, you got what? You got the God genes with Thor. You have people sitting in here alongside the monkey DNA, you got the DNA of the falcon. You got the DNA of the wolf. You got the DNA of creatures that are unseen and unheard of unless you're doing this stuff right here. And they keep it from you and they make you think that it's a drug when it ain't a drug. The LD50 on psilocybin is so high, you have to eat your body weight in it to kill yourself in 1 second. Meaning that I can put 150 pounds of mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms in, you can eat and eat and eat, and you ain't gonna kill yourself. But to put that much salt there, or sugar, or try to drink 10 gallons of water. It was made for us. It was made in a different universe, but it was made to wake us up. It's the Akashic records, or the records of the acacia, DMT, tryptamine hallucinogens. This is Ansar, Wasir, Osiris, whatever you want to call it. They knocked the head off of him. But he's in his mushroom lift form because he is the Lord of the underworld. The mushroom, the real mushroom, is the mycelium that grows because they are feared of the X-men and X-women. That was on the X chromosome, the mitochondrial DNA chromosome that gives you your superpower. As I said before, you got the God genes with Thor because on the side of that monkey DNA, you got the falcon DNA. That's the God gene because you have those people who are descendants of the gods here on earth right now, working 9 to 5s and can't get gas in your car. Then you have the super soldier, which is Captain America. You have the technological soldier, which is Iron Man. You have developed human beings, the Black Widow, and Hawkeye. You have somebody who was morphed and mutated by cosmic radiation, gamma rays, zelted by gamma rays, the Incredible Hulk. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of one of these sisters getting loose and Dred started doing this, and she said, I don't want to have it, I ain't taking this no more, and lightning and thunder start electrocuting people. It's inside of this. The information is there. This is the underside cap of a psilocybin mushroom. These are the basidia, where the spores live. There's millions and millions and millions of spores living inside of this. If you got two spores, a little man spore and a little lady spore, and put them together, you can create, from this spore print, 1 million pounds of mushrooms. But the symbology behind it is the circle within the circle, which is the circle within the circle. Now, of course, this ain't a perfect circle because it's in nature, but this is what it is. I'm in rock. Rock, that's the symbol of rock, right there. Circle within the circle. These are actually ear studs, kinetic ear studs, showing that in Kemet they knew all of the different hallucinogenic mushrooms in their area. That's the pineal gland. It ain't part of the brain. It's part of a specialized cell that migrates from the roof of the mouth into the ventricle system, because that's why it initiates language. This is the great cow, because cow symbology, if you have the symbology and understand the cow, the great cow, the cow mother, Het Haru, house of Horus. Horus gives visual acuity, farsightedness, flies high into the sun, can stare into the sun, your whole sun-gazing thing. Only the high falcons, the eagles and stuff like that, fly up into the sun and stare into the sun in flight, up above all of the birds. So the second level of ingestion is that the first was visual acuity, which was an adaptive advantage for a hunting and gathering group. The second level of ingestion is that it's a true aphrodisiac. It's not like pseudo-aphrodisiacs where you get genital itching, meaning that, okay, your genitals itching, you might as well use it. And then we're creating larger than women so that they can impose intercourse. That's the reason why. Meaning that, okay, honey, I don't want to. Okay, I'm bigger than you, you're going to anyway, so that's how we're going to perpetuate the species. Marriage for the first million years was, no, I don't want to. Well, you're going to anyway. Now, I'm not saying the moral implications, none of that in modern terms. I'm saying that's what was created. That's why the big male rat has intercourse with the smaller female rat when he wants to. You can build society to say that, you know, okay, you can't do that no more, which we've done, but that ain't the reality of what nature put together. So it's an aphrodisiac. It gives what's called CNS arousal, central nervous system arousal, which in the male is erection, you can't go to sleep, an antsy feeling, meaning that you're ready to get busy. And the third ingestion, the third level of ingestion is the mystery. It is just as much a mystery today in 2015 as it was 30, 90, 100, a million, 2 million years ago. It's still the same mystery, and it's more of a mystery now because we're stupider. We're going to try to put all the other things on top of it. So 3 levels of ingestion: visual acuity, an aphrodisiac, and then the mystery. These blue dots on the cow, now we've never seen a blue dot on the cow, but it is showing a relationship between the Carillion or Azarensian blue that this mushroom is and the cow, because it comes and grows and lives in the cow dung. This is the dung beetle. We're not going to go a lot into that. We talked about it. The dung beetle rolls the ball of dung up And inside of that dung are spores, which sprout mushrooms, which, when the baby beetles come out, they eat the mushrooms, and the thing goes on. This was a actual video of it going on, but the video's not working. Okay, this is Wasir with the veil. We're gonna move through this quickly because I want to get to some other things. These are just Wasir and different mushroom glyphs. The falcon standing on the mushroom glyph with the Netaru, or this is the God. And of course, when we get to the mushroom and the cross, John Allegro, when he deciphered the copper scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, they said when they started the Dead Sea Scrolls, everything that supports our brand of Christianity, that talks about Jesus being born of a virgin in 3 days in the crypt and coming back and being on the cross and all that, we'll put that out. But everything that goes against it, we're going to suppress. John Allegro wrote the mushroom and the cross and put out stuff they didn't want. So they actually regulated him to obscurity and housed him the rest of his life, because he was one of the translators of the Dead Sea Scrolls who said that Jesus was a mushroom. Mushroom cap stems. Let's move through this quickly. The white crown of the South is actually a depiction of a baby mushroom. This is a baby mushroom here. This is the white crown. Quickly, because I know, how long do we have and how much time can we go? Okay, well, see here we have the head of the cow, the blue caps, and Haru standing on the blue mushroom. I want to move to the red mushroom. These are some mushrooms in cultivation in somebody's house. We won't mention whose house they're in cultivation. These are just like to show these, because they, it shows how the beautiful these mushrooms can be. That's a cap, that same cap that I had before, the circle within the circle. DVD disc, this is the outer rim. That's what you put on the spindle, and that's the information inside. This is a spore print. There are millions of spores there from that actual mushroom that I had previous. This one, this is the spore print of it. This is Jesus getting ready to kiss this guy. With behind him, his wife, Mary Magdalene, one of his 3 wives, Mary Magdalene. And he's getting ready to kiss this guy. Now, that's a whole other different story. We're not going to go into that tonight. But this is Judas. And the reason why he's getting ready to kiss Judas is because if you look at Michelangelo's painting of the Last Supper, you have 4 sets of 3 different groups. And Jesus being in the middle, the center, being the 13th. You have the 12 different signs, and Jesus is the 13th. So Judas is Scorpio. And when the scorpion stings, the imprint of the sting looks like 2 lips. That's why they call it the kiss of death. The scorpion is the only creature that can look you in your eyes and say, I love you so much, and sting you at the same time. Everything else got to back their booty up to you. A bee, a wasp, or whatever, they're going to sting you, they're going to do like that. But a scorpion say, oh baby, I wasn't messing around with that girl. So, Judas being Scorpio, he's giving him the kiss of death because he betrayed him, to the scribes and the Pharisees and all that kind of stuff. But behind him you have this circle behind him. They say, oh, well, that's his light and all that kind of stuff. But if you go back here and you see them lines radiating out, there's some lines radiating out. And behind him, I know it hurt some folks saying Mary Magdalene is his wife, and actually Elizabeth and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus, were his wives too. Because culturally, number one, you couldn't be a rabbi, which they called him. You couldn't be a rabbi without being married. It ain't like a priest. That happened at the Council of Toledo, when they said that a man can no longer have more than one wife and the priest can't have no wife. That was the Council of Toledo. This was before then. To be a rabbi, you had to be married. Put a rope around your ribs, and then they break both your legs, because it was part of torture. Because because if you sink down on the rope, and the rope suffocates you. So they want to see how long you can hold yourself up before you sink down on the rope, because you hurt them more than they broke your legs, and you're trying not to sink on this rope, but eventually you sit down on the rope and suffocate yourself. So suffocation, because you know you can hang on the cross quite a bit, even though they say Longinus stabbed him and blood and water came out. That's for the Yeshua by Yusuf story. So behind the head you have this mushroom, that mushroom. So behind it I just put that. Okay, and quick, we're gonna go into some other stuff. You see behind the head of this Buddha, the same thing. The ling, hand, and the yoni. You know, and these are all the virgins. You know, if you get the right dose, you can go see all the virgins. But you see the circle within the circle with the lines radiating out. Here's a mushroom stem and a mushroom cap. This is a different type. I mean, even scary. This is the Santa Claus mushroom. So you have the lingam and the yoni stylized. You have actual mushroom stem and cap doing the same thing. Here you have Persephone and Demeter. This is where the old woman who is no longer bleeding, has liberated her sexuality, and she's given the mysteries of sovereign womanhood from the older woman to the younger woman through the mushroom. That's Dionysus. We ain't got time to go into Dionysus. That's a clip that I want to show you of Henosis, which is the bringing together of one flesh, golden cap mushroom underside. And of course we have modern day renditions with Through the Looking Glass or Alice in Wonderland. We have all the mushrooms. You know, if you go to the second Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf tells Saruman about Radagast, saying that there is a necromancer in the ruins. He said, Radagast, that fellow, he always eating those mushrooms. And yeah, Papa Smurf. Papa Smurf, you know, you have the red white mushroom. This is the Santa Claus mushroom. This is the one that the reindeers eat. This is the one that the Siberian shaman eat and ingest to do their work. And in Siberia, snow gets so high on the door you can't get in. So what they do is they take the red bag full of these mushrooms, go up on the roof, climb down the chimney, and then do their magical work with the people and stuff like that. Get out, get in their reindeer sleigh, and go to the next place. And that's where the whole Santa Claus thing comes from. I know it's amalgamated with certain other European configurations. St. Nicholas, who was at the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea was where 1,800 bishops got together, had 1,500 come from North Africa to Turkey, or later be Constantinople, and Nicaea in Turkey. And what they did was they had a debate. Arius, who was the bishop of Libya, old man, 79 years old, said, we can't do this. We don't want to confuse the people. You know, we can't be doing that same old stuff we've been doing with Baal, Dionysus, Osiris, all the other guys, Bacchus, Ahura Mazda, all of them. You know, they were born on December 25th. You know, in March they died. You know, they were the Son of God. They all got the same script. Said, we've been doing that for 5,000 years. Why y'all want to do this? Why don't we liberate the people? Why don't we give them the real, true information? And so the debate went on so long, Nicholas took a chair and hit the old man in the head, knocked him out. They pulled him out of the council. The bishops from Africa went back to Africa, and then the rest of them brought about the Nicene Creed, which is, we believe in God the Father Almighty, make up heaven and earth, the same old Jesus Christ thing that they've been doing for the last 2,000 years. But this is the Santa Claus mushroom. Penis-shaped mushroom. This is the Amanita mushroom. This is the earliest record of possible use in ancient Vedic hymns of India. Urine journey associated with mushroom intoxication mentioned in the Rig Veda 9th and 10th mandalas. That's the Rig Veda old Indian script. These are the Catholic. This is Pope Innocent. Well, I'm sure he wasn't innocent. But this is Pope Innocent to somebody. You see the color of the clothing that they wear? Because the Catholics use this mushroom, the bishops and the cardinals, they use this mushroom. And that's why they symbolize it with their clothing. These are the judges, this is Thomas More. This is angels and demons. To show that it wasn't just hundreds and hundreds of years ago and paintings and things like that. This is the God and Demons, Angels and Demons, the movie that came out a few years back. This is 2 years ago at the homily of the Holy Father. This is where they make the Holy Father making a new cardinals. Brother sleep. Both cardinals sleep. This is 2 years ago. This is how they dress. They still do it. They still use it. This is, you know, the whole thing they do with St. Peter's Basilica. And, oops, on the Fish's Night. This is the Cathedral of the Blessed Sacrament. This is around the corner from my house. These are, what, steeples?
No, flag buttresses, no?
No, they're pine trees, the Christmas trees.
Oh.
The stylized Christmas trees, because that red and white mushroom is the gift at the bottom of the Christmas tree. It is the fruit that grows at the bottom of the Christmas tree. So these are Christmas trees because the fruit grows at the bottom of it. This is the stem, and this is the cap. You open the doors into the mystery of the mushroom of the universal church of Catholicism. This is the doorway of the Cathedral of Notre Dame. You got the stem and the mushroom. Yes. You have the window around the corner from my house. You have the circle within the circle with the lines radiating out. Now, of course, it's stylized. It ain't gonna look exactly like the mushroom, but that's what the symbol is because the cap is your way in. This is, well, this is actually a crypt, but this is the rose window in the Cathedral of Notre Dame. You have the circle within the circle with the lines radiating out, and the ancestors of the Catholic Church lived inside of those spores, inside of that mushroom cap that we showed you back a few slides. This was also a video that's not working. This one shows the reindeer flying, but they're not flying, they're just eating so many mushrooms, they're running like they're flying. This is the Santa Claus. This is another clip, but clips ain't working tonight. Give the hyperdimensional experience. Say you 14 years old and you walk home from junior high school, and the music playing, girl, if you guys, a girl you like in the party, in there, and you go in there and to the party, and they're in there snorting some of their nose. So you want to be cool like everybody else. You don't want to say, they say, here, take some. You no, I don't want to do that. I don't mess around. No, you want to impress the girl, stuff like that. So you take some. It becomes a defining thing in your life because it's heroin. You snort some heroin, pretty soon you're shooting, stuff like that. What this does is, you take the Igbo game, you go back in time to that same day, and you're walking past the house, and the people say, the girl say, come on in. You having a good time? And he say, no, I'm gonna do my homework. You walk past, and the addiction is gone. You never did it, it's like it never happened. Okay. You're 11 years old. Your mom and daddy ain't been out on the town in 2 years. Your Uncle Freddie's in town. They say, Freddie. Because Freddie stand with y'all. Freddie been in the joint. And Freddie stand with him and say, well, Freddie, can you watch a little time? We want to go out to the movie. We want to see what's the new car movie out? The guy got killed in the 70s. Fast and Furious 7. Mom and Dad would try to see Fast and Furious 7. So they go out, and then Uncle Freddie, around 30 minutes or so, he creeps upstairs and poses himself sexually on the young boy. Becomes this defining thing in his life. Am I homosexual? Am I, why did this happen to me? All this kind of thing. You can't have a healthy relationship with a woman because this thing is always on top of her. What you do is you take the Igbo game, mom and dad go out, about a half hour happens, Uncle Freddie going up the stairs, he hears a key in the door. Mom and dad is back, saying, this was such a popular movie, they sold out the tickets. So we couldn't go to the movie. So we just gonna stay at home. Uncle Freddie, you can go on back. And so Uncle Freddie never comes up them stairs. So it is as if it never happened. And it's off your life. So with that, let's get something to eat. I'll come back. We'll do a few more minutes. This is another couple of hours. But we're not going to do that in a couple of hours. I'm just saying it is a couple of hours. We're going to come back for some questions and answers. Tryptophan, which is in some of the foods we eat, serotonin, melatonin, 5-MeO, DMT, and then you have some other byproducts. These compounds are illegal in the United States. They're Schedule 1. They're considered Schedule 1 drugs, even though they aren't drugs. This was due to Richard Nixon's war on drugs. The timeline goes something like this. Gordon Wasson, who was a Wall Street banker for Chase Banking Group, married a Russian woman who was part of the Russian aristocracy. Lore, you have mycophiles and mycophobes. Mycophiles are those who love mushrooms. Mycophobes are those who hate mushrooms or are afraid of mushrooms. And usually, Western Europe, British Isles are mycophobe. Eastern Europe, mycophiles. So when they got married, his wife went out picking mushrooms, put them in the food and said, no, the mushrooms, they're gonna kill you. And so he ate them and didn't die. And so he went to Mexico to supposedly participate in one of the last bashes of mushroom rituals. And he met this woman by the name of Maria Sabina. Maria Sabina was a curandero. I remember she used mushrooms to cure people. In May 1957, in Life magazine, he wrote an article about the magic mushroom, which sent droves of young, white, all these movements started. The green movement, the gay movement, the movement to love trees, save the whales, all that kind of stuff. But nobody cared about no whales before they started taking mushrooms and LSD. Nobody cared nothing about no trees. Trees, you made furniture out of trees. You know, boxes, stuff like that. Nobody said the tree's got life and, you know, we got to preserve this grandfather tree, and you go up and hug the tree and say, tree, I love you. Nobody did that before then. Because nobody had that type of sensitivity. You had people who were, before that, you know, I mean, nowadays you have more people who are adopting a homosexual lifestyle. You have folks who are born that way, and you have people who adopt the lifestyle. But before then, you had people who were homosexual who lived their whole lives. Nobody ever knew. They were married. You know, you could have a man who was married to his wife for 50 years and be psychologically distraught because he had to go through these liaisons with people and still put the facade together that he was the, you know, tough, rough, family man with children, all these kind of things. That's what Route 66 was. Route 66 was a homosexual highway from Chicago to LA because truckers at that time, they had motels going up and down Route 66, and that's where men would meet for their liaisons down Route 66. As a matter of fact, that's how Holiday Inn got started, because there was no standard hotel that a person could go through, because how you went from the Midwest to California was on Route 66, and if you had your family with you and you stopped at a motel because you got tired, you got all these guys hanging around humping all on top of each other, and you couldn't take your family there. So the guy said, well, I'm going to make a hotel where I can have my family at, that I don't have to worry about this happening. So he put a standard together utilizing that old movie with Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye or whoever it was, Holiday Inn, or Bing Crosby, Holiday Inn. He used that name and put the Holiday Inn together so that you have a standard hotel. But you have women who would be with men for 30 and 40 years, and all the time you thought that Aunt Sally was your Aunt Sally, and Aunt Sally wasn't Aunt Sally. Aunt Sally was your mama's girlfriend, and you didn't find out until your mama was dead, and you found out this. We're just saying what happened. So what happened was, if you can no longer, you can't get psilocybin, because they were taking regular button mushrooms and putting acid on the button mushrooms and everything else, saying it was psilocybin, and it wasn't. And when, you know, things like Woodstock happened, and taking hallucinogens, and it becomes a profit, money-making thing, corruption comes in, criminality comes in, all these things happen, and you get a guy by the name of Ronald Reagan, who wants to run for governor of California. He says he'll get rid of the drug hippies in Ashbury, and then they need a scapegoat. Now, Charles Manson is crazy. I'll be the first one to raise my hand to that. Charles Manson is crazy. But Charles Manson didn't kill nobody, nor did he tell nobody to kill nobody, and Charles Manson should be in jail for that. You know, the Tate LeBlanc murders were a ritual, a satanic Hollywood Church of Satan ritual murder. Roman Polanski, who had the apartment in New York, he got run out of the country because he had sex with an underage girl and left and went to Switzerland or something like that, and he got run out of the country. His wife was Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate was pregnant with his baby. Roman Polanski's apartment in New York was rented out to John Lennon and Yoko Ono. John Lennon is the one who wrote Helter Skelter. What was written on the walls when Sharon Tate's baby, Rosemary's baby, was sacrificed in that house, Helter Skelter was written all over the wall. After Helter Skelter is written on the wall, the song that John Lennon wrote, John Lennon gets killed in front of the apartment building of Roman Polanski's apartment, of which he left, which left his baby in California, which was ritualistically killed in California, and they did a scapegoat. So they made Charles Manson the monster to stop the drugs in California and usher Ronald Reagan into not only the governorship, but later into the presidency. And it had nothing to do with homosexuality and all that kind of stuff, because Ronald Reagan was, you know, they were all part of that Hollywood thing, Hollywood thing. John Wayne, all the rest of them, wearing dresses, John Ford, and all that kind of stuff, you know. James Dean, Jane Mansfield, all those folks who were part of the Satanic Church. You know, Jane Mansfield got her head cut off. James Dean got his head cut off in the accident. You know, they turned little Sal Mineo out on the set of Giant with Rock Hudson and James Dean on the set of Giant. That was Ronald Reagan's little boyfriend. You know, Dick Gregory. You know, he had the tape that he got from the publisher of Hustler magazine, Larry Flint, because Larry Flint got things on everybody. And he had a tape of Ronald Reagan, you know, with sixes, heels, fishnet stockings, garter belt, bra, dancing on the table and stuff like that. Dick Gregory told me about it. Dick Gregory took it and threw the tape in the Potomac because he didn't want it, because it was too hot to have it, because they were trying to get this tape back because Ronald Reagan at the time was president. And they didn't want this going out onto, you know, into the public domain and stuff like that, you know. And it goes with the guy on Hope Is Heroes, they killed him, all that kind of stuff. It's the Hollywood thing. But Charles Manson, the demon of the 1960s, drug culture, killer, LSD people, didn't tell anybody to do anything and didn't do anything. So most of the propaganda is because of that, you know. it's because of, oh, if you take LSD, you take mushrooms, something like that, you're gonna think you can fly and run and jump out the window. No, the guy the famous doctor who they say ran and jumped out the window, number one, they gave him LSD without his knowledge of it, because the CIA used to do that. Used to go around and drop LSD in people's drinks just to see what it would do. And the guy didn't run out the window. The CIA, they threw him out the window and killed him because he found out that they had given him something. He didn't know what it was, so they killed him. And his family won a non-disclosed amount of money because they won the case against the United States government for throwing their father and husband out the window. Which they say, he said, oh, I think I can fly, and ran and jumped out the window. No, suicide doesn't make you stupid. If you're stupid before you take suicide, then you still be stupid. But it's not going to make you stupid. It's not going to make you do anything that you wouldn't do. If you're crazy before, you'll be crazy doing it. But it's not going to make you do anything that you wouldn't normally do. So, moving real quick, we're going to move to questions and answers. I just want to move through these things real quick and move to, let's see. Okay, I just wanted to give you the safety profile. Okay, safety profile toxicity. You would have to eat your own body weight in one sitting from just a toxic dose of psilocybin mushrooms. Paul Stamets was one of the mushroom luminaries. Real quick, we'll go for these guys. That was the magazine article, Life magazine, 1957, May 12th. This is the colossal heads on Easter Island. They have on hats too, but you can see the configuration of what this is in the nose. When you look at the statues, you never see it, but you just think of the nose. Real quick, going through these are all necks. You have the mushrooms in the eyes. Here you have actually I can never say this name, but this is the Mexican ball game where the losers, you sacrifice the losers, but the mushroom is here for the cup. This is the shape-shifting face turned into mushroom stones. Okay, here are mushroom wands from West Africa. You can see the mushrooms, you see the stem and the cap and the wands. Also the statues, the masks. See again, these are mushrooms, they're places. You have to hang on the wall. You take the mushroom, you put the mask on, and you go into the place that mask has. There's still a couple of hours worth of stuff. We're not going to do that. We're going to turn the lights on and open myself up for questions, so y'all can do your question because I want to do that part also. Thank you very much. I'll open myself up for questions. Anyway, this was, since we started so late, it was kind of rushed through. I could really flesh it out. So maybe if you all want me to come back sometime in the next few months, I'll come back and we can go through it a little more in depth and not so fast because we started so late. So questions, anybody? Everybody just sit there now. I got some questions for you. Yes.
I wanted to ask, when you were talking about the ritualistic killing of the people with the Manson thing, I was running for a seat on the school board where I used to live, and I kept getting this feeling in my spirit like if you don't pull out, they're going to kill somebody in your family. Do you think that when you're going to do things that there has to be a blood sacrifice to like get to a different level?
There are things like that that are done. I don't think they do it on local school board matters, but in ritual, folks do things like that, like Bill Cosby when he wanted CDS or whatever it was. Then all of a sudden his son Ennis gets killed, and things like that. On those levels, yes. Not so much in local politics and local school board and things like that, but those rituals are done like that. So folks will sacrifice their firstborns and things like that for power and fame and things like that.
Is it happening on a knowing level or just because they're going for something?
Oh,
when
no,
they
no,
make
they
an
know,
agreement?
no, they know, no.
They know.
Yeah, yeah, you got to give it up, you got to give up the energy. You got to take them, down there and hold them down, that type of thing. Question, anyway. Yes.
Could you talk a bit about alignment and like breathing, breathing and say grounding symbols when going through the experience?
Well, I mean, there's no grounding or alignments and things like that. You can do those things to increase your discipline on this side, but it's not going to make much difference on the other side, other than you can maybe focus for your goals more. If you say it's like this, adventures abound inside of these transdimensional realms. So if you go in saying that I want to, just to make it simple, I want to see my grandmother and I will speak to my grandmother because I want to talk to her before she dies. So when you get in there, you say, okay, I'm going to see my grandmother. Then all of a sudden, the sun explodes, and you get all about grandma, and you go watch the sun, and then you off on some adventure with strange beings and hobbits and Frodo and looking for the One Ring and all that kind of stuff. And you forgot about grandmother. The next thing you know, you're out of it. You're like, what did I say I want to do? It's kind of like with DMT. DMT is. Oh yeah. If you smoking DMT is, I've never injected it or snorted it, anything like that. I ain't into no needles and none of that kind of stuff. So smoking DMT is like, it's very fast. With psilocybin, it's like you take it and there's a leading up like a roller coaster. You go up the hill and there's maybe a half hour, 45 minutes. Then when you get to the top, you peak and it's zoom. You in it, then all of a sudden, zoom, you're out of it, and you know, it comes down slow, and you take the next day to debrief. DMT is like you're there right now. You take the first hit, hold it, take your second, stuff is starting to you take the third. Boom! You know, and you in a different world, a different place. The wall is not, this is no longer there. You some place on some foreign universe, the other side of the galaxy, with strange stuff going on, you know. And you have to act like you're supposed to be there. You can't act like, you know, you can't go in on bended knee or humble and, oh, please, I just want to, I'm here with the guys and all that kind of stuff. You got like, you know. So what's going on tonight, y'all? What y'all, yeah, you got to, you know, you're there with the big dogs. You shouldn't be, if you don't act like you're supposed to be there, folks gonna look at you start, well, okay, what are you doing here? That's no matter how large they are, how tall, or whatever, and ain't got nothing to do with it. You going like you own the joint. You know, like Bobby Hennett said, you older than the guys you worship. That's the trick. They say when they kill the Titans and ground them up, they put them in the man. The genes, the DNA, the matrix that you are is older than the things that you worship. And if you look, and they don't want you to.
Say it again.
What they say in Genesis, you know, don't let them eat the apple. Because if they eat the apple, the eyes will be open and they'll be like us. And that's when they manipulated the genes. That's when they manipulated the genes so you no longer make vitamin C. You know, because all of the other great apes make their own vitamin C. You don't. They have an extra chromosome that you don't have. You have a fused chromosome. And then you have the a way of being that's, you know, it's just up over and above all the other great apes, but the thing is that when they manipulated these genes, they manipulated them so, number one, to be short-lived. You know, you don't start making hyperdendrite connections until you're 50 years old. So you basically don't start, you don't get smart till you start getting smart when you get 50.
Wow.
And the connections, it takes you another 20 years to start making the connections. And by that time you're already breaking down and you're more worried about, I gotta take my blood pressure medicine and I gotta go to the hospital, and my hip hurt, and all that kind of stuff. And this is the time when you're supposed to be, life's supposed to be beginning. Because you're just not getting smart enough to figure it out. You ain't worried about this and that you was when you were 30, you know, what so-and-so said and all that kind of stuff. You look at old people, they say what they want. You won't say what, when you were 40, you wouldn't have said it. But now, like, I don't care what you say. I'm going to the bank and I'm getting my own money out and I drive my own car and you can go sit down over there somewhere. You know, but you don't get that until after a certain age. And, you know, a man is not fully grown until he's 40 years old. That's been since the beginning. That's when you inherited your father's land and your father's work. The father sit back and retire and give the son everything at 40 years old. And watch him for 10 years because he ain't get started making connections and get smart till he's 50 years old. And by that time, his son should be 30-something, and he get ready to flip it over to him. Women is like 20, 28.
Wow. People smart at 28, is that what you're saying?
The women get smart at 28, no, the women are born smart. But
I like that.
because they have to be, because they have to deal with children. Once your business starts, you have to be smart enough to make the right choices with the right man. And that's why it was done by families. It wasn't done by individuals, you know, because you're going to like the blue jeans, or you're going to like the, you know, he got a nice car, or he got, you know, he wearing Stacey Adams or something like that, you know. But your grandma going to say, no, this is the man for you. You know, he don't wear no fancy clothes, but he come home at night. We found him in the church. That's why families are put together. You don't just get who you want. You know, love don't come like that. Love come over time, over arguing, over being together, over, you know, over somebody squeezing the toothpaste out every night when you said don't squeeze the toothpaste out, washing dirty drawers, taking the trash out when you don't want to, fixing the car, when the car stopped on the highway, having to get up at 11 o'clock and go out there and fix the tire for your wife. You don't do that for the girlfriend you're just messing around with. You can see her number on the phone, and it's 11 o'clock and you know she called for some nonsense. She out there, she had no business being out there at the club, no way. She didn't text you talking about her tire and busted, and she on the highway, and you just put the phone back in your pocket and say, I ain't going out in the cold and the snow. You should have had her butt out at the doggone club, no way. But if it's your wife, and it's saying, oh, well, shoot, I got to get up and go fix this doggone tire. So grandma and them knew what man to put you with to be able to do that. So women are smart from the start. Man, it take a long time for us to get smart. It take a long time for us to calm down too. That's why you put older men with younger women. You don't put two young fools together. That way, when by the time the man, if you stay with the man 20 years, he's dead, you got all this stuff. And then you in your prime, you 40, you got $250,000 in the bank, and you got the insurance, you got the house, you got the car. Now you can go off and do what you want to do. But Stephanie, the woman who has stopped bleeding, who has liberated her sexuality, trying to tell a little dumb young girl what to do by giving her the mushroom. These are secrets that we threw away to be cool, to be, you know, hip-hop. You know, a culture is all the things that you do inside of it, not, you know, just what you wear. You know. Questions? Yeah.
When you mentioned earlier, you said something about, I found it interesting to elaborate a little more about women giving birth without men, and also when you said that men are fading out. You know, I just wanted to understand what you kind of said.
Well, you should be able to see that men are fading out. You know, I came in town from Cleveland because I have a mushroom farm in Cleveland. And I'm coming in the bus, and I got to get to the house in court. So I come in, I get a cab to Kinko's because I had to put some paperwork in. So I get on the bus, you know, going home. Rather than have somebody pick me up on there on the bus line, I just get the bus. So I'm on the line, and you know, the guys getting on switching, you know, and you know, and it ain't, you know, it's easier for them to not be masculine. Everybody don't have to be a homosexual, but you can be effeminate and not be homosexual. You know, you can be, you know, just soft. You know, always putting on lotion. I know people say, why can't you put on some lotion? But you big grown man sitting up on the bus squirting lotion.
Never paid anything.
I'm like, Negro, what's that? You know, so men are fading, you know. And as far as parthenogenesis, that's what happens when, you know, men start to fade, women start to producing women, you know. Because it said the first 80,000 years on this planet, there were only women. Because we came into the solar system from, well, different folks from different places, but from Sirius. And when you come in, you hit Mars before you hit the Earth. So Mars was the base that was set up to fight those who we was fighting in Sirius. You know, the dragon queens in Sirius we were fighting. So when we came, we stopped on Mars and we fought on Mars. The men sent the women to the Earth. And that's why Mars is the war planet, because that's where the war conditions was. That's where all the things that we fought with were there. We stayed and fought, and the women came to Earth, and they stayed here until 80,000 years before they produced any more men. They produced through parthenogenesis. You know, women, you know, in harmony, you know, they could walk through the doggone moonbeam and get pregnant. Walk across the holy man's drawers. It don't matter, you know. All you need is all you got to do is start the matrix.
Is that kind of why I remember reading Malachi York was talking about the XY chromosome and how in the old lessons he was saying how kind of like the male was a defect in some way because of like one of the legs that fell off. So is it kind of
no, it's not. That's not. I read Malachi York. And listen to some of the lessons. No, man is not a defect. Man is a conscious choice of to be produced for dealing with the conflict that we've been dealing with for 16 billion years before this universe was popped out of another universe. You know, you bring forth men when the things get so hectic with these aggressors. You have to bring forth men to do it. And when you don't have the aggressor there, the manhood diminishes, and the women produce without the men because parthenogenic babies are female, except in special circumstances. Just like with when we talked about Doom. If you didn't read the book Doom, get the movie. There's two movies: the old movie and the new movie. The old one is much better than the new one, but it talks about the Bene Gesserit, which were these women who were part of a society who produced women, and they were trying to produce the universe's super being. One woman was kind of a renegade. She married a duke, and they produced a child, and she was trying to produce a super being, which she did. You know, they say that it was Duke Leto Atreides' son, but he was not. He was a male-produced parthenogenic being, which is a super being. In other words, because the 99% of the children that come from parthenogenesis are female. Because females don't need men. They talked about it in Jurassic Park. They said, oh, we're only producing females, that's why we ain't got to worry about none of the dinosaurs getting loose. And making more dinosaurs. And they're also, they're deficient in lysine. So if they don't get their supplements of lysine, they're going to die out. So that's what gives us, make sure that they won't get away and they won't produce no dinosaurs. We ain't producing lysine, yes, amino acid. Right. They won't produce dinosaurs, get loose and start just making dinosaurs and kill everybody off. But the guy said, nature always finds a way. They got some type of way, they got lysine in nature through some plant or something that they was eating, or some dinosaur that ate the plant, the dinosaur ate that, and they got lysine, and then they produced a male, and they started producing males, and Jurassic Park went all over the place. They got a new one coming out probably next month, where they genetically engineer one of the dinosaurs and they get loose at the dinosaur park. Question?
So basically, it's going to be a little scattered, but hopefully you can help me, right? So you said that Jesus had the 12 disciples. He's the 13th, right? Then I did a lot of research on Ophiuchus and Isis' return. What does that mean?
On the what part I didn't get the last part?
On the Ophiuchus, I don't know if I'm saying it right, and Isis, you know, the 13th sign being returned and all that. And then I'm trying to make the connection with the DMT and the other psychedelic drugs. So if we take these drugs, right, just for instance, right, do you think the ancestors or whoever you're connected to, depending upon if you're fasting and whatever, are they going to give us a resolution for the planet? Because I feel like, you know, the Mayan thing, the renewal and all that stuff, that has something to do with all the information we're getting now.
Well, no, they ain't gonna give me no solution for the planet, because the planet is not important. The importance is for human beings to move to the next level, into the immortal, into the unbound, into the universal super being. In other words, you can't, as a human being, do anything. Our goal is to grow out of the human, through the transhuman, into what there will be next. And what will be next is unimaginable. Yes?
In your experience, what's the best way to intake mushrooms? Cook them? Do you just eat them raw?
No, you just eat them. Well, you use you dry them.
Dry them off.
Yeah, because it's water weight in fresh mushrooms is hard to get enough into you to really go where you need to go. So you dry them so the water's out, and then you take high doses. Once you start low and build your way up.
These have to be wild, right?
No.
Oh, you can get them from the
Wild from the kitchen. You can grow them. You learn how to grow them. It's not a big learning curve on learning how to grow them. That's the whole thing. Right. That's what I'll be talking about this weekend in Amherst.
Yeah,
University of Madison, Amherst. I'll be talking about mushrooms for the people.
Did you see True Blood, the series on HBO?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, because they were talking about, you know, real life fairies and people drinking True Blood, and, you know, like, we are obsessed with that, right?
Oh, well, the true blood. Remember the red mushroom?
Right. Santa.
That's the red juice of that. That's what they call the blood.
Right, I'm feeling it.
And that's the fairy mushroom. That's fairies and elves and dwarfs and sprites and spricks and water spirits and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, all that stuff. You know, all you gotta do is get some of the mushrooms, get out of nature, and that stuff be running all through every place. The trees be talking and moving around. One tree be here, you turn around, look back, the tree be standing over there. You know, all that kind of stuff. And if you're into it, you know, the werewolves get to howling out there and all kind of stuff. We do a group session. The sisters do a group session, the brothers do a group session, then we do a session together. Brothers be out there, they be fighting werewolves, decloaking Klingons, death cruisers, chasing aliens through the corn and soybean fields and everything else. Questions, anybody? Yeah.
I was telling you earlier, I had an experience lately, and I may have received a mystery of some sort, but I wanted to go back into the experience of actually doing the mushrooms with you. Like, if you had any thoughts or anything you wanted to say on the presence and role of ego in the process, and if you are familiar at all with the demiurge.
Maybe with demiurge, yeah.
And if
The non-space, yeah. Well, the god of this planet is, or the gods of this planet, because it ain't one. Even the Hebrews are not monotheistic, they're henoistic. In other words, they chose one God among many. Because it never says it's one God, it says that you should have no other God before me, which means that there are other gods.
Yes.
So the thing is that, yeah, the gods of this planet are pretty much crazy. They're Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever, they're like Jabba the Hutt, them international, interdimensional gangsters who go to small people who are naive and try to play God on them and stuff like that. We're the gods. You ain't no God. You just live longer than people who live at 70 years old and run a game, you know. And that's all it is. So they're just kind of like bullies, you know. Have nobody but me, you know. Get in bets with, you know, but this is all man's interpretation of all this. You know, get little Joe, he got a family, he got a wife, children, got a farm, and Satan say, well, I bet I can make him curse and not kidding about you. God said, well, heck no, that's my boy Joe. He with me. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to kill all his kids, kill his wife, give him swords and boils and everything else, and let's see what happens. That's all human being stuff, because none of that stuff was in, none of that stuff until Faust and the guy that wrote Paradise Lost and all that kind of stuff where you doomed to hell and you down in hell. And, you know, you down in there and, you know, little monster eat your eyeball, and when you eat your eyeball grow back so he can eat your eyeball again. That's all medieval nonsense that they made up. The thing is if you really go down to it, none of that stuff none of the people never existed. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Jesus, rest of them, they never existed. That's all of them. And the Romans made that up, peace over them, to control the people. You know, it's always about control. Keep you scared, keep you away from your power, keep you away from this. That's why it's illegal. What they care about you doing something, when they can give you antityl. What are the contraindications of antityl? You get it for cough, but slushy bowels, depression. If you have thoughts of depression, I mean, if you have thoughts of suicide, please call your doctor. You know, shortness of breath, hair growing on your tongue, all them contraindications. And they tell you about it on TV, and you'll call the 800 number to get some because you want some, because the pharmaceutical company said they want some. They're genetically modifying the food, putting all kinds of stuff in it because they're scared of it. They're scared you may wake up. The internet is crazy. They're trying to get some range on that. They don't know how to get range on it. You know, because there's too much out there. The only thing they can do is make you send your kids to school, and hopefully you get another dumb generation like the dumb generation that sent their kids to school again. You know, I didn't send my kids to school. You know, you can teach a kid absolutely nothing, and they'll come out better than the ones you send to school. Because they're teaching them the same nonsense they taught us. You know, Columbus discovered America. But anybody who says no, Columbus never got to America.
But
You know, the Magellan circumnavigated the globe when Magellan only got to the Philippines because he got killed by Lapu-Lapu in the Bay of Sulu in the Philippines. So how you gonna go, the first man to go around the world? They said that Marconi invented the radio when we know it was Nikola Tesla who invented the radio. He even took him to court and won the court case, but they still put it in the history book that, you know, Marconi invented the radio. All of that stuff is nonsense. You know what made Henry Ford rich? George Washington Carver. And George Washington Carver was a man who did what?
what was special about him?
What was it? What did George Washington Carver? What was he? The man who did what? Who talked to plants. How did George Washington Carver talk to plants?
Because he had no balls.
George Washington Carver was the United States
He had no balls.
premier mycologist. His
He
mushroom
was
collection
castrated.
is in New York City.
Most people don't know that.
Yes, it's true.
He was castrated.
I've always
You
looked at it
understand
as like,
castration and you
you know,
hear
when
him
you
talk to
lose
the
one
first time,
gift,
you
you
understand.
become heightened other gifts. So I've always looked at it as since he was castrated,
You
you
see,
know what I mean? He just,
That part of the history they don't tell.
of course.
That's why he produced the watermelon, with a lot of seeds in it.